Good morning. Welcome to Blood Moon Oracle, the reading of the day. We are reading through a book called Spiritual Hygiene. Today we're starting on level 2. We finished level 1, which was all about healing. And today we are going to start with level 2, moving to the next level of this thing that we call Spiritual Hygiene, a book written by Iyanla Vanzant, the author, a New York Times bestseller, and it's all about the practical path for clean living, inner authority, and divine freedom. Listen, I am all for it. And so we are going to go ahead, get started today. If you are new to the reading, welcome. Thank you for joining. And if you want to purchase the book, you can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can order it online. It's around $20 to $30. So it's not really expensive. And you can join us if you like. Spiritual Hygiene by Iyanla Vanzant. My name is Leticia. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you feel led. And we are going to jump right in for the sake of time. They can be a little bit lengthy. And so we're looking into level 2. Level 2 is all about soul cleansing and detoxification. It's a sacred descent into the body, is what level 2 is. I do want to take a moment to discuss what we've just come through, a massive scale of understanding and teaching around healing, what that means, how it looks, how signs of healing that's needed may show up in our lives. She went into detail, into depth about what that looks like and how we can utilize different tools to help us through this process. All of those videos are in my playlist and they are free, so you can go back and look at any of those. As we delve into chapter 2, this leads us to another level of healing, or another level past healing, if I can say that, which is the detoxification of the body, a detoxification of the soul. And she uses these very interesting words. I do want to go and see if this is in the glossary in the back, because it's just so interesting. Some of the words that she uses. Let's see. And of course, these are not in here. But when we talk about cleansing, soul cleansing, the word cleanse is in here. And it says the intentional release of what no longer serves energetically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. There's an invocation also here that says, sacred wind and holy water, wash me. Cleanse the remnants of what is not mine. Let my soul be clear, my heart be light, and my body be restored to its sacred purity. And then when I think of the word detoxification, is also a bit of the same thing. It's releasing toxins, things that are toxic, releasing toxic elements from our soul, from our spirit, from our emotional and mental being. And so this is like a sacred deep dive, right, that we're about to do. Let's go ahead and jump right on in. I'm so excited for level 2. Now that we have gone through the healing phase, the healing process, I don't know about you, but I do. I feel lighter. I feel freer. I feel more fluid, like I can handle more. And so it's good to work through these. It's good to work through these. I did just realize that I forgot to attach to the last episode the resource. So I'm going to go and do that immediately after this. For that last chapter, I think the resources may be very important. And so I am going to set a reminder to do the resource for the last chapter of healing. There's something very interesting that has been happening where I am, and I have had this period of time where I've been very attached and connected to nature. One of the things is birds, very connected to birds. Here where I am right now, the birds, they don't sleep. Like you can go out at midnight, 3 o'clock, and pass by trees and birds are singing in the trees, and it's still dark outside. And there's this collective of sounds and chirps. It's almost like a song, a love song. The birds don't sleep here for some reason. I don't know if that's normal, but I love it. I love the fact that I can go out in the middle of the night and nature is alive and well and singing and in harmony, right? It's such a beautiful thing. I'm saying that because I can hear them right now outside my home, and they're singing, they're engaged with each other and with nature and their surroundings. And I hear the high-pitched sounds of life. And it reminded me of going out early this morning before the sun rose in the middle of the night, and they were singing. As I was passing by, I could hear them up in the trees, just conversating and fellowshipping. It was the most beautiful thing. And so let's get started. And we are in level 2, the start of level 2, page 111. That's one of my favorite numbers. And there may be something very specific that happens. If you're following along, welcome. I'm so glad that you're making time to stop by and tend to your soul, tend to your energy, your spirit. There's something very special I feel that's going to happen within this level. Let's dive in. Soul cleansing and detoxification, a sacred descent into the body. Welcome, beloved, to level 2, she says. Soul cleansing and detoxification. At this level, our work is about creating a sanctuary for sacred release and inner purification. Now we move into the space of ascending higher in our mind and heart by descending deeper into our feelings and body. The intention is to touch the places in yourself that are tender, forgotten, or buried beneath the dust of survival. This work is not about striving. It is the work of uncovering, of peeling back the layers that no longer serve your truth, of honoring the memories of your body that it has been carrying quietly for years. This is your sacred permission to feel, to remember, to cleanse, and to return to the inner throne. For this work, you are not expected to be strong. You are invited to be honest. We are not chasing healing. We are making room for it. Here, your body becomes your altar. Your emotions become your offerings. And the wisdom of your soul will become your guide. We are crossing into a space of radical tenderness, where the residue of trauma, memory, and emotional stagnation is no longer something to be afraid of or ashamed of. It will be acknowledged, honored, and released. This is a sacred unraveling, not because we are broken, but because something holy is breaking through. In level 2, we will travel through 5 sacred territories. Number 1, the body as the archive of the soul. Number 2, the language of pain. Number 3, permission to feel. Number 4, rituals of release. And number 5, returning to rhythm. You will encounter stories of people who may feel familiar, either as demonstrations of your own experience or that of someone you know and love, perhaps your Nisa. To support your work, We will learn the language of your body as a guide for healing, understanding how trauma is stored in the cells, muscles, and breath. We will identify and release emotional congestion through sacred movement, water rituals, and gentle practices that invite the body to speak, tremble, weep, and remember. We will cleanse inherited patterns and ancestral residue by clearing energetic imprints that do not belong to your soul's true essence. We will reframe pain as holy information by understanding your symptoms, shutdowns, and stories as messengers calling you back to wholeness. And we will restore your physical and emotional rhythm by learning to live in alignment with your body's natural intelligence and cycles. As you encounter these teachings and recommendations for the work you can do, remember, this is not about perfection, and you cannot do it wrong. This work is about presence, your presence for yourself, within yourself, authentically. This work is not about denying, avoiding, or bypassing pain. It is about learning how to bless and release it. This is where you cleanse not just what you experienced, what was done to you, but this work is also about acknowledging and clearing everything you were forced to carry because of it. As you move through the pages of level 2, I encourage you to do what you can, what feels right, no matter how often the deceptive intelligence whispers, it's not going to work for you. It may work for everyone else, but not you. That is something Nisa often said to me. I share with you what I have shared with her. A little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. May your breath deepen. May your tears baptize. May your body remember. May your soul cleanse itself through the grace of embodiment. You are not alone, and it's not too late. You are exactly where your healing can begin again. As always, we begin with prayer. This opening prayer is called the Sacred Descent into My Holy Body. Beloved presence of divine grace, I come now to the altar within, not in search of answers, but in devotion to truth. I stand now, not as performance, but in presence. I choose now not to be strong, but to be seen, felt, and freed. I invite the sacred light of remembrance to descend gently into my body. I allow it to illuminate the silent spaces, my clenched jaw, my tender belly, the ache in my back, the breath I forgot to take. I am here not to escape. I am here to enter. I am ready to touch the grief I silenced. I am willing to encounter the shame I inherited. I now choose to bless the stories trapped in my flesh. This is my sacred descent. The deeper I go, the higher I rise. I call upon the wisdom of my ancestors, the prayers of the unwept, and the courage of my inner child who is still waiting to be held. I ask for and open myself to receive cleansing of the dust of survival, detoxification from the expectation that hardened me, freedom from the illusions that told me feeling was dangerous and wrong. Make room, O beloved spirit. Make room for healing to arrive in waves, in weeping, in trembles, and with truth. Let my body become the sanctuary. Let my breath become the balm. Let my willingness be the testimony that something sacred is being made new. I do not need to know how, I only need to be here. Willing, present, honest I am. May this work become a flowing river, a powerful movement, a sacred rhythm that leads me back to my original wholeness. And so I begin, washed in grace, held by love, restored with elegant ease. I ask, I allow, I receive. Amen. Ashe, Aho, and so it is. All right, as we always do, we start or end with the prayer, and then we go into the chapter. And this is chapter 11. I'm sorry, chapter 6, excuse me. Why did I say 11? 11 could be significant for someone. I know that's my master number. But chapter 6 says, the holy unbinding, allowing the body to speak. We talked a little bit about that in the last level, about how the body communicates pain or whatever needs to be expressed. When we don't express it, the body will, allowing it to speak. What the soul cannot express, the body will remember. What the body cannot release, the spirit will carry. Until it is witnessed, it will remain. That is the beginning quote that she has placed on this chapter. Then she says, there comes a moment on every healing path where the soul no longer asks for more insight, analysis, or explanation. It seeks relief and release. This is the holy work of spiritual hygiene for the body. This is no longer a process of fixing what is broken. It is time to detoxify and cleanse what is buried within or heavy. This is the work of returning to the body's natural rhythm of feeling, flow, and freedom. For some, these states of being may feel familiar, even unreachable, yet they are your birthright. In the sacred context of spiritual hygiene, these are not luxuries, they are sacred intentions. At this stage of your journey, you are invited to step into the temple of your body and listen deeply to what still lingers there. The ache in your spine, the weight in your chest, the tightness in your jaw. These are not random discomforts. They are echoes of the voices that have something to say. These are prayers of unspoken grief, unexpressed anger, unmet needs, waiting to be heard, honored, and released. The body remembers everything that the mind could not process and that the heart was afraid to feel. The soul's cry for cleansing. Have you ever felt like something inside you was broken or missing? A mental or emotional ache that refuses to go away no matter how many workshops you attend, books you read, or self-help tools you try? Have you cycled through countless modalities, therapies, rituals, even mood-altering substances, only to end up in the same relentless search for relief? This may be the voice of your body calling out for healing. Trauma leaves behind energetic residue that settles into the body, mind, emotional field, and soul. Whether the trauma is personal, ancestral, or even culturally inherited, its residue can manifest in every aspect of life: relationship, health, work, finances, and especially how you relate to your own body. I do not speak this from theory. I speak it as a witness. The journey from Ronnie to Rhonda and from Rhonda to Ayanla was shaped by hidden pockets of trauma lodged deep in the crevices of my body, places I did not know existed. The unhealed residue of these traumas delayed my healing, distorted my self-perception, and depleted my strength for years. In 2016, I traveled to Jamaica for a speaking engagement. While there, my colon ruptured. At first, we thought it was food poisoning. I had just gotten dressed and put my makeup on. I was ready to take the stage and address the eager audience when suddenly I began vomiting uncontrollably. I thought it was the result of the wonderfully spicy food I had eaten the night before. 20 minutes in, I realized something else was going on, but I had no pain. I felt perfectly fine. My wonderful daughter-in-law was feeding me Pepto-Bismol tablets, and my manager was right at the edge of panic. In my normal superwoman, I've got this posture, I decided I would take the stage anyhow. With a trash can in tow, I went out to the audience and announced to them that I was not feeling well, but I did not come all the way from the United States to disappoint them. I told them that if it became necessary for me to use the trash can, I would, and we could continue with the event. They applauded. Funny how people will unknowingly support you in maintaining trauma-driven, self-destructive behaviors. I spoke for about 20 minutes, my stomach flipping like a 747 amid a tornado. By then, I was also feeling weak and dizzy. I asked myself, what would you say if someone in the audience asked you what they should do if they had a commitment to do somewhere but felt like deathly ill? In that moment, I shared what I was feeling. I told them I had to go take care of myself. I promised them that if I were better, I would come back tomorrow. If I couldn't, I would make sure they received a refund for their tickets. To their credit, the audience stood up, applauded, and told me no refund was required. A doctor who was in the audience attended to me. She prescribed me anti-nausea medication, believing, like we all did, that I had food poisoning. I made it through the night because my stomach had been emptied of all food. Dry heaving took the place of vomiting, which rendered me physically exhausted. We booked the first plane off the island, which put me in the middle seat for the 2.5-hour flight with my son and a stranger sharing the row. As soon as we sat down, my son instructed the flight attendant to call for an ambulance when we landed. Morphine and a drug cocktail stopped the heaving for long enough for me to do blood work and have a CT scan. It turned out there was a rupture in my colon, and they could see a mass. It was septic, and they detected some other bacterial virus, which meant I needed to be quarantined. Everyone coming near me needed to wear a gown, face mask, and gloves. Wait, what? I'm contagious? I've got cooties? Physical cooties? It was all too much for my Virgo sensibilities. Not only was I contagious, but I was also being scheduled for emergency surgery. I told the doctor that before any surgery could be performed, I needed to pray and ask God if it was necessary. In his most respectful tone of voice, he replied, "Oh, I'm a Christian too, but you better pray fast because you are scheduled for 11 o'clock. It was 10:20. When I woke up from the surgery, the first face I saw was Nisa's. They told me that she refused to leave the room. She was masked, gowned, and gloved when she stood up and said, "Hey, old girl, welcome back." For the 11 days I spent in the hospital, she never left my side. Nisa had worked for the past 7 years at home health aide for an elderly woman. Everything she knew, everything she had learned, she used on me. She was wonderful, gentle, kind, and patient because as someone who had never been ill, I was a horrible patient. The mass they detected in my colon was actually my left ovary. Somehow, no one knew how because they had never seen anything like it. The ovary had plunged a hole in my colon. There was no hemorrhaging, no scar tissue. Somehow the ovary made its way into the colon and plugged up the hole. The body does not forget. Before the mind can form a memory, The body has already registered the experience. This is not metaphor. This is sacred physiology. Long before we could speak the language of emotions, our nervous system was fluent in safety and threat, touch and tension, breath and bracing. The body, unlike the mind, does not argue, negotiate, or analyze. It simply records. This is the foundation of somatic memory, the understanding that the body stores the emotional, spiritual, and energetic imprints of our lived experiences. Every sigh we stifled, every scream was silenced, every time we tightened our jaw, clenched our fists, or folded into ourselves instead of being allowed to fully express, we encoded a message into our muscles, our fascia, our bones. The body becomes the archive of the soul, a living, breathing, remembering entity that houses both what has been processed and what has not. Nisa did not cry when her father left. She smiled. She helped. She performed. I am now aware that the sorrow lodged itself in her chest. 20 years later, she described it as a tightness I feel when I breathe too deeply. This is why she gave up on meditation. The tears never reached her eyes, but her lungs never forgot. The body remembers the stories we tried to skip over, the silent heartbreaks, the things we tolerated, the betrayals we internalized. Our bodies carried them when our hearts could not. These imprints may look like migraines that coincide with conscious or unconscious emotional triggers. They may look like autoimmune conditions, trying to suppress rage or grief. They may look like sexual numbness or pain where there was once violation. Or it may look like digestive disorders linked to anxiety, lack of safety, or betrayal. Avoid the ego's temptation to make this about blame. For spiritual hygiene, it is recognition. The body is not punishing you. It is signaling faithfully where love and release are still needed. The next part says from suppression, to stagnation. From suppression to stagnation. During a retreat I facilitated, During a retreat I facilitated, I encouraged participants to give themselves permission to participate fully in whatever they felt. Whatever came forward. A woman stood up and asked how she would know if it was working for her, if nothing happened. She said, I don't cry, I just can't. I explained that crying, while helpful, wasn't necessary. I also asked her if she was willing to give her body permission to cry, even if she didn't. Later, in a ritual I conducted where we did gentle pelvic rocking and breath work, her entire body began to tremble. Immediately, she tensed up. I asked for permission to touch her. She nodded her head, saying it would be okay. I stroked her cheeks and forehead. I held and squeezed her hands. I waved a tissue drenched in rose oil under her nose. When her body finally relaxed, she sobbed for 40 minutes. Afterwards, she said, that wasn't even about today. That was about my 10-year-old self. She finally felt safe enough to grieve. That is the power of the body when it is given space to speak. The emotions were not gone. They were dormant. They were waiting. I love that. And then the next part says the vessel, not the vault. If you want to feel energized, grounded, and spiritually clear, your body must become a vessel, not a vault. The body is a sacred vessel, a living altar. Just as you would never leave dust and debris on the altar in a church or a temple, you must not allow emotional debris or energetic smog to linger in the sanctuary of your physical form. Through rest, movement, breath, and ritual care, you create a physical environment where the divine can dwell fully within you. Spiritual hygiene for the body is not limited to food and fitness. It includes the release of stored grief, unmetabolized fear, and inherited pain that is often embedded in cellular memory. Because we are addressing the physical body, we must use physical means: sight, scent, sound, movement, touch. These are the sacred languages of the body that can be honored through sacred tools of purification, such as a sound bath, healing oils, dance, stretching, sweating, bathing, weeping, stillness, and ceremony. Meditation, prayer, and affirmation are sacred and powerful. However, some traumatic memories are not released through words or thoughts alone. Some require your hands, your health, or your breath, your hips, your feet. Some require sweat, salt, and sound. This is sacred work. Your body is a portal, not a prison. The greatest lie many buy into is the belief that their body is a betrayal to them, or it is betraying them. This is weak, broken, or burdensome, or that it is weak, broken, or burdensome. In truth, the body is the most loyal companion you have ever known. It has kept you alive through everything. It wants to be listened to, not managed, not silenced, not rushed. The body wants to be understood and reverently honored. Spiritual hygiene for the body means you make space for holy unbinding, letting the body unwind from what has offended or abused it. It means you must become willing to learn to be attentive to your body's language. The language of the body is not always linear or literal, but it is always, always true. The language of the body is universal in its form, but intimately personal in its meaning. A racing heart may signal panic in one person, but excitement in another. Tears may mean sorrow, but they also may mean freedom. Stillness may feel like safety to one person and a shutdown to another. This is why spiritual hygiene teaches us to listen deeply and to discern compassionately. No two bodies speak exactly the same, but everyone's body tells the truth of its experience with radical honesty. The 90 days I spent with a plastic bag hanging from the side of my body were the longest, most significant days of my life. It was Nisa who helped me put it on and take it off. I had a deep aversion to the sight and the smell. She handled it as if it were common everyday events. It was Nisa who rescued me from the restroom at my hairdresser's the day I put the bag on incorrectly and left little piles of poop in the corridor on my way to the salon. I had lost a great deal of weight, thank goodness, because with that bag protruding from the side of my body, form-fitting clothes were a thing of the past. That was my everyday experience. On the spiritual level, I recognized with painful awareness that I had not been nice to my body. I didn't drink or do drugs, but neither did I eat regularly or rest properly. Around week 2, when I could get the bag on and off without support, I had an epiphany. For most of my life, I had been holding on to a lot of yes, she said the word, a lot of stuff. My grandmother's meanness towards me, bordering on emotional abuse, which was often demonstrated as physical abuse. My brother's silent support of my grandma abused and neglected me. My father's silent accommodation of his my grandmother's mistreatment of me and her inappropriate coddling of my brother. My aunt making me her emotional sounding board and insisting that I continue calling my uncle daddy after she knew he had sexually abused me. The silent whispering about my mother, who was actually my stepmother, because she was light skinned and had good hair, and all the other inappropriate conversations I was privy to and was expected to remain silent about. These sudden flashes of remembrance also gave me a deeper insight. Even as a child, I was usually the sanest one in the room, which no one appreciated. Another thing I learned during those 90 days how careless I had been about what I ingested, not just with my body, but also with my mind. When you're forced to see everything you put in your mouth, you gain deep clarity about what to eat, when to eat, what it will look like when it comes out. You get very clear about the importance of chewing well so that your food will digest completely. It's one thing when you're talking about food, which you can monitor and control, but when it comes to what you see, hear, and feel, you are upping the ante. I had heard and passed on gossip and malicious speaking. I had tolerated and engaged in name calling and intentional misrepresentations of myself and others. I had rehearsed angry conversations in my mind that never made their way to my lips. I held on to them. I replayed them. I explained and expanded them. And eventually I owned them as my truth. I was stupid. I was ugly. I always thought that I was better than everyone else. I was ungrateful and arrogant. I needed to stay in my place. My big ideas and I were headed for a great big fall. There were hundreds of them floating around in my mind, things I had heard or been told that I'd ingested and digested without any consideration for their impact on my body. During those 90 days, that bag hanging off my body brought me face to face with every fear I had ever experienced. I finally understood when I hesitated, when the time came to execute a plan. I also became aware that once my mind had figured out how to move through the voices of the trauma, I drove my body like a Mack truck through an 18-wheeler, determined to reach my destination in record time at any cost. What is the language of the body? The language of the body is not made of words, but it is made of sensations, tightness, tingling, heat, numbness. It is made of emotion, tears, joy, fear, rage. It's made of impulse, the urge to move, cry, rest, or scream. It's made of rhythm, breath patterns, heartbeat, energy levels. It's made of posture, how you hold or protect parts of yourself. It's made of symptoms, pain, fatigue, illness, or disease. Pain, tension, hunger, and fatigue are not enemies. They are nuggets of information. When you ignore or deny the body's language, you will become neck down, unalived. Neck down, unalived is the condition of being energetically disconnected from the body while still functioning in the world. Alive in thought, moving through tasks, but numb, silent, or shut down below the chin. It is the state of spiritual and emotional disembodiment, where the body becomes a vessel of function rather than a sanctuary of feeling, flow, and divine presence. In spiritual hygiene, this phrase reflects a sound that is no longer listening to the wisdom of its own body, a self that has become so mentally dominant or trauma protected that the sensations, signals, and sacred messages of the body have been muted or ignored. When you are neck down, unalived, the body becomes the ruler and the body becomes the servant. You might be able to speak truth, teach wisdom, or offer help to others, but you do so while being unavailable to yourself. Wow. This condition often arises in survivors of physical and sexual trauma who learn to detach from bodily pain or threat. Those who are highly spiritual people who prioritize transcendent theory over sacred embodiment. Those who overfunction, they're overfunctioners or caretakers who tend to focus on others while neglecting their own needs. The cost of being neck down unalived is that your inner altar goes unattended. You stop feeling fully. You know what to do to get things done, and it becomes the priority. You may lose desire, passion, pleasure, or vitality, or you may be overcommitted, constantly moving, too busy to feel. So you don't think about what to feel and perform that outwardly. In the process, the body begins to store grief, shame, fatigue, and inherited pain. Over time, this becomes spiritual smog and emotional clutter. It can also manifest as autoimmune issues, inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and physical stagnation. The path back from neck down unalivement is not mental, it is movement. It is breath, sound, scent, sacred sensation, kind of like a massage. And it is ritual. To return to life, you must return to the body. Spiritual hygiene for the body requires reverence. It means treating your body as a sacred space, listening to it, speaking kindly to it, nourishing it with food and rest. The body does not lie, nor does it hold grudges. As I learned in Jamaica, it does not wait for approval or the most convenient time to speak. This incredible vessel that we have been given to journey through life tells the truth about how your soul is doing every single day. Learning the language your body speaks is about communion. It is how you return to yourself with reverence. And just to stop right there, yeah, I have, I can remember one situation that's coming up right now where it was back when I spent a lot of my time in service to the church. And at this time, I was raising my children, raising them alone. And so the church was my family. It was my support system. It was my spiritual structure that kept things together for me spiritually, emotionally. So I thought, okay, so I thought I'm going to add that. And during this time, I would spend a lot of time at the church doing ritualistic things, like Bible study, choir practice. During this time, I also offered up my personal time to serve the church for different things that needed to be done. If there was ever any special servicing, there's certain times of year where there's special meetings and fellowships that happen. Like I attended everything. I didn't miss anything. And it was kind of like this, neck down. I didn't have time to feel. And so I busied myself with performance, thinking that that was a substitute for healing, that somehow the healing would happen if I just kept myself busy with, and I'm going to say it, with the Lord's work, right? That's what's coming up. I'm not going to hold you. I'm going to just really be honest and truthful that somehow I would be seen. I would be noticed. My condition would be felt and the healing would be given. It would happen. Not understanding that the healing does not happen in the doing. It happens in the being. Even in the absence of all of those things, I was worthy of the healing. But it was my misunderstanding of how that could take place. So like Ayanla, I prided myself in the doing, in the busyness, in the serving, and the being available, to the point, I remember there was this one year where I had a little cold. So I thought upon the healing of the cold, how there's the lingering cough that happens afterwards. And I had this lingering cough and it just persisted. I was taking Robitussin, eating cough drops, drinking ginger root with lemon and doing all these things with this cough. persisted and it became more harsh, like to the point where it started to sound like a bark. And but I continued to go, I didn't have time to stop. I didn't have time to stop and listen to my body and rest and do all these things and make sure that I was tending to my altar. And it got to the place where I started to cough up blood. And I was like, okay. And so, I went ahead and stopped at that point, right? Now I had to get all the way to the point where I started coughing up blood to realize that something was wrong. So I went to the doctor, and it turns out that I had been, moving around with walking pneumonia. I had walking pneumonia. I don't know how long I had it, but the doctor, said it's time for you to really sit down and rest and take a break and do nothing so that you can heal your body. My first thought is do nothing. Do you not know who I am? Like, I'm a mother, first of all, single parent, breadwinner. Like, I'm the provider, the caregiver, the nurturer. And on top of that, all of the different hats that I wore for the church. And I'm like, take a break and sit down? What are you talking about? Who has time for that? And he told me that, but I'm thinking in my mind, like, I can't afford to take a break. Like, who's going to do these things that I'm responsible for? And luckily, I still have my grandmother who is still living. We were very close. A day did not go by that I did not see her face or talk to her on the phone, more like see her face at this point, because I was also her caregiver as well. And I told her what the doctor said, and she was like, I told you, you're doing too much. Girl, ain't nobody in the whole wide world can do that, what you doing. And she would often ask me, like, how are you doing all this stuff? And at this time, I don't know how I was doing it. I was just doing it. But this is how. It's because I was neck down, unalived, not really tuning into my body and what it was saying. I just knew what needed to be done. And so there was a bit of a disconnect. But this was the wake-up call. And because of my grandma, she said, no, you're not going home. Because if you go home, I know that you're not going to sit your tail down, for lack of better words. My grandma spoke very freely, especially when it comes to stuff like this. She would cuss me out in a minute to bring me back to my senses. She's like, because I know you're not going to sit your little tail down. She would use other explicatives. And so she was like, you're going to stay here for the whole 7 days so I can make sure that you're not doing all that extra stuff. They're going to be okay. They will be okay if you're not there for 7 days. They're going to have to be, because you need to take care of your body. And she made me stay with her for 7 days. I rested. Oh my gosh. You're talking about peace. I have forgot what that felt like, to not be on a time schedule, to not have to go ripping and running here and there, and to have, like, when I tell you, my whole week was filled with stuff. And then as I look back, those are some of the things that I would absolutely change, because in my pursuit, there was a lot of things that fell by the wayside. There was a lot of things that I sacrificed in my pursuit. Some of those things were concerning my children. And if I could go back, I would absolutely reprioritize my life. First of all, for myself, and second of all, for my children. Not that I regret anything, but because I have been I have been so committed to the lifestyle as I raise my kids, I do feel like I have benefited, and I have a lot to be thankful for. When I look at my children, I'm very thankful. But there's a lot that I would change at the least. But it is what it is. Hindsight is 2020. We can't go back. But as I look back, I understand. I absolutely understand, because this was me. This was me. And it was not out of passion per se. It was out of the need to do and to go, and thinking that if I could do enough. It was almost like the idea of works. Depending on works for the healing, which could not have been further from the truth. And so, I definitely understand. how you could get to this place. And for me, it was also kind of like Ayana was saying, it was the needing for healing. That's what I was searching for in doing and making myself available and serving, hoping that somehow through this, through being available and, offering up myself in that way, that healing would take place. Well, guess what? It never did. As a matter of fact, the very opposite took place. I became more separated, more disconnected, more unable to connect with myself. And I'm not talking about, these very shallow manipulations that happen when the music is high and everybody running. And, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real healing that produces change, that produces a change in the way that you think. And that's translated to your very lifestyle, something that can be seen and felt as healing, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about healing, not performance. And so I relate to this. I do. And through that lesson, I learned something very important. It brought me back to myself, and I began to awaken out of this thing that I was under. I began to awaken back to myself and understand that I am my first priority. All of those things that I was doing was nice, but it didn't help me heal. It didn't help me, create a safer, more productive environment, when it comes to healing for my children, for my lifeline, right? That's personal. That's personal. And it cannot be done through performance. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And I've always been somebody that's been very much interested in my body. I've always been a thick girl. And so that's something that I've always had to be concerned about, is my health and not letting things get out of control, keeping, trying to stay as healthy as I can. And, at the same time, feeling really good about my body and this vessel, this temple that I get to experience this lifetime in, right? There's a lot of work around that as well. And so all of this really, it comes down to, it hits home for me. And when we talk about learning our language, when it comes to learning the body's language, this means becoming fluent in those subtle messages that are being sent. I'm sure there was some sign that I needed rest. And that's what that was. It was a lack of rest, always going, thinking that if I pop a couple of pills or drink some medicine, that it's going to be okay. I can keep going. No, the body was saying, sit your tail down. You're doing too much. You're overextending yourself. Sit down. But I was so busy, so wrapped up in the thought that nobody could do it but me. If I don't do it, it won't get done. I need to do this, right? We trick ourselves in that way, but the body has a way of subtly signaling to us what is needed, what it needs. And it sends those messages if we're listening. And it could come across as like flutters in our belly, tightness in our throat, aches in the chest area. They're not random signals. These are sacred communications from the inner world, from the spiritual, energetic world. And so it's up to us to learn our body's language and to build trust with it. This is our temple, to honor what is being felt and to respond with presence instead of dismissal. Oh, I'll just pop a couple of pills and keep going. It's the very foundation of embodied spiritual hygiene. So we started with healing. Now we're going into understanding and connecting with our body. That's a part of spiritual hygiene, being able to understand and receive the communication through the body. This is about tracking sensations instead of stories. Instead of saying, I feel anxious, right? You can say, there's tightness in my chest and my body. What is it that you're trying to tell me? What do you want me to know? Start communicating with your body. My jaw is clenched. Body, what are you feeling right now? Why is my jaw clenched? My belly feels hot. Body, is there something you want me to know? Right? Start talking to your body. This helps you to learn to decode those signals the body is sending you without layering interpretation too soon. Honor the first impulse. The first movement your body wants to make is often the most honest. Stretch, lie down, walk fast, rock back and forth. That's the body speaking. Listen to it. Let it do what it is releasing. Honor the body. And then you can journal the message. Keep a body language journal. Ask these questions. What are you trying to tell me? Why do I feel anxious in my stomach? Why do I get shaky around this person? What do you need? What are you holding that I haven't acknowledged? What am I not seeing? And then you can ritualize a response. Once you receive the message, offer a response to it. If the body says, I'm tired, rest becomes your spiritual hygiene. If the body says, I'm holding grief, tears and movement become your spiritual release, right? If the body becomes tight or anxious in a certain place or around certain people, maybe that's something that you need to pay attention to and ask, why does this happen? Is this something I need to work out within myself and be courageous about? Or are you telling me I need to steer clear of this, right? Ask the question. And so a word about ritual, returning to sacred rhythm in the practice of spiritual hygiene for the body. Ritual is not regarded as religion, though it can be, because ritual is really, let's look up that meaning. I consider ritual to be religion because in my definition, and I'm gonna look at hers, ritual is, she doesn't have it here. In my definition, ritual is a repeating of something through some kind of deep meaning or a sacred meaning behind a repetitive doing of something. A ritual is something that you do continuously or repeatedly, but there's some meaning behind why you do it. So for me, religion can be ritualistic. However, it's not regarded as religion, restriction, or rules. For me, that can be construed synonymously with religion. But for the purposes of healing and restoration, ritual is about rhythm, right? It's about that repetition. It's about reverence. It's about having a deeper purpose or some sacred meaning behind, and it's about reconnection, right? Ritual is the way we honor what matters, right? I know sometimes when we hear ritual, because of how we have been taught, we automatically connect that with things like witchcraft, ritual. For some reason, there's some disconnect there. That's why we have to be really careful with language, and we have to look up words and not just take the common meaning or associations, because there's something to be learned about words. First of all, words were created with a purpose. Words are created to guide us to a certain way of thought. And sometimes they can be very manipulative. This is one of them. Ritual. We all have rituals. It is not correlated to witchcraft. That could not be further from the truth. The fact that you get up every morning and make up your bed, that's a ritual. If the first thing that you do when you wake up is pray or meditate, that's a ritual. When Sunday comes around, if you make your way to a church house, that's a ritual. Okay? And so it's about rhythm, reverence, and reconnection. There's a deeper meaning behind what we do. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but there's one there. It's a way that we honor what matters. It is how we bring presence to our breath, intention, and our movement and soul into every day. Like I was just saying, she says, many fear that word ritual because it has become misunderstood, misused, or disconnected from love. Truthfully, ritual is simply the art of turning ordinary acts into sacred ones. I like that. Lighting a candle with intention is a ritual. Bathing with prayer, stretching with gratitude, breathing consciously. All of these are rituals when they are done with awareness and sacred purpose. In spiritual hygiene, ritual becomes the bridge between what your body carries and what your soul is ready to release. It creates containers of safety for cleansing what is heavy, for cleansing what is heavy, restoring what is sacred, and welcoming the divine into your physical form. Ritual is not always something you perform with or for others. It is something you do with divine intention for yourself. This means that ritual is not something to fear. It is something used, engaged, and employed to remember and realign. It is your birthright to make meaning, to move with intention, to turn the mundane into the miraculous. Ritual is the way the body prays. Oh, I love that. Ritual is the way the body prays. So what is your rituals? What rituals do you have? Because that is how your body is offering up communication with the divine. Whatever that is, I love that. That's the way your body is offering up communication with the divine. Sacred movement as spiritual hygiene. Just as we brush our teeth and bathe to maintain physical cleanliness, the soul asks for spiritual hygiene through movement to stay clear and whole. Movement is not always exercise. It is not for performance only. It is also used to establish presence and connection. Sacred movement is movement with intention. It is the act of letting the body speak in ways that words cannot. It may look like gentle stretching with deep, slow breathing, shaking out the limbs to discharge held energy, rolling the hips to reclaim sensual flow, placing your hands on your heart and rocking slowly, letting your body dance, weep, crawl, or kneel without inhibition. And you know what I'm seeing in my mind is many of the African cultures have brought over to the Americas their way of sacred movement, this sacred dance that they do, right? And around the water, or maybe within nature. And they just allow the spirit to move through their body, right? And I often say, and this might be controversial, a lot of people think that they sent missionaries over to introduce the gospel. But as I think back, these are cultural norms that has been happening way before, and when we look at these sacred dances, I often wonder how far they go back. These are things that were happening and our ways of communicating with the divine source past this point at which the gospel was delivered over to Africa. These sacred movements, the dance, the sacred dance, the spiritual dances that are well known within the African culture. A lot of times it is it's something that looks different to us because we're not used to it and we don't necessarily understand all of the important aspects around it. I've seen some videos where women are dancing in the spirit and they are topless. Well, yeah, they're topless because the culture over there is not consumed with sexuality, right? We're consumed with sexuality over here, so we have to cover up because of the mind, where it takes it. But imagine being in a culture where you're not consumed with sexuality. They're not really concerned with covering up because the mind doesn't go there, right? And so, yes, we see these pictures and these videos of the dance. That's what's happening. There's this ritual, this connection with a divine source, whatever that would be for them, right? But I say that to say that there was a connection way before, right? There had to be. And sacred movement reminds me of that. What if that is part of their ritual? of staying connected and releasing things from their body. That's what is being brought up for me as I'm reading this. The sacred movement is not always just exercise. It's not always just performance, but there is a presence and a connection that's being established. And that's something that we get wrong. Some of these things we think we brought to sacred people, tribal people, but it's some of the stuff we got from tribal people and we brought it over here and established it within our sacred rituals. We talk about being filled with the Holy Spirit, right? That's something that is of controversy, because I feel like that might have been something that was taught to us, something that was added to our practice instead of vice versa. That's something that we brought over and added. And it wasn't immediately accepted. It was something that slowly began to be accepted, right, within the religious structures. When movement is intentional and sacred, it becomes medicine. Medicine is not meant to fix us. It is meant to bring us back to ourselves, this kind of medicine. Just to go in the flow of sacred movement, just to get in the flow of sacred movement, we're going to try a simple exercise, one where we can start our day. Begin with stillness and curiosity. And you can say something like, body, what do you need to say today? Just ask a simple question, and then place your hand on your heart or on your body. Place one on your heart and one on your belly, and then wait and listen. Don't rush through it. Just be patient and hear what is being said. And even if nothing comes through, the question opens the channel for discussion. And then surrender to the need to do it right. Surrender the need. This is not about perfection. This is not about being right, but just surrender that. That's not what this is about. This is about opening up and being okay, right? Even if it does take a couple of tries before the body does respond, it'll take a moment. It'll take some practice before you become fluent with your body's language. This is not a performance. You're not performing. You are releasing. You're awakening. You're reconnecting. Okay. How does it feel? How does it feel? So we're going to stop there for today, because it goes into a whole nother few pages called The Wisdom of the Body. And we're already an hour and a half in. Should we finish this? Let me see. I almost feel like Spirit wants me to stop here and do a little segment, a part 2 of this. And so we're going to stop here. I'm going to do part 2 of chapter 6 and come back and add a second half of that. Okay. All right. We're going to stop there because this is an important place to stop. We're talking about reconnecting with the body, listening to the body, being attentive to these signs that the body gives. Those aren't not just your body. Does anybody ever have a flickering of your eye? Sometimes it just flickers. It starts to flicker. You can't see it if you're looking at it, but you can feel it. That's a nerve ending. There's something very significant that's taking place that you need to be aware of, or something about to happen, right? So the body communicates with us in so many different ways. It's absolutely amazing when we start to tap into it, and not to even discount, ways that we can communicate outside of our body. Sometimes I will just be really still, and in my stillness, once I go so far into meditation, I'll begin to feel the energy in the room or in the next room. Our bodies have what we call an aura. That aura is an extension of our body. That's taking it to a whole nother level. And so that communicates with our environment as well. There's just so many things that the body can do when we start to tap into communicating in it and seeing this as a tool of communication. It's just amazing. But we'll leave it here for now. So when you get up, just try that. Try getting up in the stillness and starting your day, placing one hand on your heart and one on your belly, and ask your body, what are you telling me today? Or when you start to get these signals in your body, stop and ask the question, why is my eye flickering right now? What are you trying to tell me? What do I need to see? Or what do I need to do? And don't feel like you need to have an immediate answer. Just be open to receive the answer. Okay? This is not about perfection. It's not about performance. This is about you being present in your body. Okay? So thank you so much for stopping by. This was an amazing beginning of level 2. I'm so excited about this. I'm going to go ahead and stop this and do the rest, wisdom of the body. And I'm going to attach it as a part 2. So that'll be out very shortly. It'll be a short extension. However, I do want to cut this video in half so this video isn't too long. Sometimes I have trouble uploading the videos if they're too long. And so I'm going to try to keep them at about 1:30 at a minimum. If I need to do a part 2, I'll do that just for the sake of quality of recording. So look for that next video shortly. It'll be around the wisdom of the body. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you are really enjoying this reading and really pulling out what's for you. I feel like everybody that reads this, that listens, will possibly be able to tap into something a little different. Maybe it will bring up your own experiences. Today, I have a rose here. This rose is very significant to me. I have a friend that I consider a friend, very beautiful spirit, a beautiful spirit. And I thought that I would bring this rose. This was a gift of the heart, and it's so beautiful. And rather than just admiring it as a aesthetic piece of art, I said, why not include it, in my readings, or at least this one? It's so beautiful. Why allow it to sit in a corner and not be seen, right? It's so beautiful. And so I did add this today in honor and thankfulness and just the beauty of how we get to experience and show up in the world. It's up to us how we want to do that. And I just tend to see the beauty. I choose to see the beauty in things, in people. Not that we don't have a dark side or things that we need to work on. We do, but we also have a choice on what we want to see as well. And there will be a time to see and work through other things. This is one of those times where we're doing inner work on things that aren't necessarily easy or likable, however it needs to be done. But there's no saying that we can't still enjoy the beauty that is present as well. And so this is a symbol of that. While we're doing the deep, dark inner work, we can also admire and display the beauty that we are, being presented with in everyday life as well. So I hope things are beautifully unfolding for you right now. I hope what we're talking about is applicable and you can see ways to apply it and help to connect with your body as we delve into this next section of level 2. Right? And level 2 again was all about detoxification, cleansing on a soul level. That's where we're headed into. Okay. So thank you for stopping by. My name is Leticia, and it's always a pleasure to read with you, to read for you. If you haven't picked up the book, feel free to go and pick it up. Spiritual Hygiene by Iyanla Vanzant. Such a beautiful, beautiful author, a New York Times bestseller. She writes this to help us with a practical path for clean living. And this type of living, we're not talking about, keeping your house spick and span, making sure that your corners and your baseboards is spot clean. That's good. But what about the inside, right? What about the inside? Jesus mentioned something about, the Pharisees or the Sadducees, how they like to present. He called them, forgive me, white sepulchres, not talking about color, people, or race, but he's talking about the cup. A sepulcher is a cup, it's a vessel, and how it looks very clean on the outside. But Jesus was like, but what about the inside? You keep it really clean on the outside and the inside is filthy, right? And so I suggest that today here. What about the inside? And you may not be Christian. That's fine. You may be spiritual. That's fine too. What about the inside? If we brush our teeth every morning and wash our face and we cleanse our bodies, what are we doing to cleanse the inside and to release the residue and the built up stuff that we've collected over the years, over the decades? That needs to be cleansed too. This is a practical path to clean living, to inner authority. Do you know who you are? Do you know the authority that you carry? And that could be physical. That could also be spiritual. Do you know? Because if you don't know, then chances are you're not even utilizing it or operating in it. And lastly, divine freedom. Right? Are you aware that you have been liberated, or you can be? Right? That you're free under divine law. That is the desire. That's why we were brought here. And so that's what spiritual hygiene for me has been about. That's a great way to sum it up. And I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I love this. I really do. And I'm going to go and add that resource to the last reading I did last week, which was, it was kind of iffy. I don't know how I felt about that reading because the sound was bad. I'm hoping this sound comes out much better, but I'm still going to add the resource in case there's someone that wants to engage with that. That goes along with that first level. And so we will see you next time. Expect that next video, the second half to chapter 6 to come out shortly. I'm going to go ahead and attach that as well. Thank you for stopping by. My name is Leticia. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you feel led, and we will see you next time. Questions are welcomed, and we'll see you next time. Bye.